How's everybody doing today? Good? Really? Let's do that one more time. How's everybody doing today? Great? Come on. Good. I think we have to do that one more time at the end. See if you guys woke up or still awake. So thank you for this very kind introduction. I hope I can live up to it. I didn't know I was actually training companies since I was 5, but let's go with it. As I was introduced, my name is Marta. I actually am here to talk to you about something that is very close to my heart. I've worked in for the past few years very intensely as a digital trainer in marketing, as a consultant for a variety of different companies, and that is all to do with the future of work. Now, the company that I work for, it's very weird that I'm looking at here, I'm looking at this, are you guys seeing the same thing? But yes, so I work for a company called Freeformers, and we are all about having this mission about creating the future workforce now. Now, in more practical terms, that means we drive digital transformation for companies of various sizes through people, talent, and technology. Now, the people part means that we don't focus so much on the technological sort of platforms and things like that, because we believe in digital transformation for people. It means future-proof digital transformation. It means people who are ready to go through any kind of change that will come even after what we're talking about this year. For every big change is going to happen after that, because what we're going through these years is not the first time we're going through something like this. The talent part is for every business person that we train a young or disadvantaged person for free, people who normally would never get the chance to work with the companies that we work with. And we place them into those companies in various ways, so they get that chance to learn from those companies, but for those companies to also work and learn from them, from their future customer or current customer. And finally, technology. The technology part is actually we created a platform where we can measure mindset shift. So it's quite easy to sort of measure how somebody performs against a certain target, right? A certain numerical target. But how do you actually measure how a person how a person's view of the world and the way they work change? So we're quite proud of that. It's called Freeformers Pulse. I encourage you take a little look at that. But that's enough of the company. Yes, as some of the brands that I've had the privilege of working with in the past, Barclays was a very big one, BBC, Bloomberg. I also regularly host events and things like that, so Upload Live is a free digital skills festival we have in London. If you're ever in London in time for that, please do drop by, it's absolutely free. I even did a consulting project with NASA, which is very cool. And I also help injured, wounded, and sick sort of soldiers leave the army and get back into society, so I've worked a lot with the British Army as well. I will be showing some videos during this presentation, and those videos are mostly from something I've also been working on, which is the Freeformers Digital Heroes series. It takes people like Vint Cerf, who is the co-inventor of the internet. Yeah, you heard that right, the internet. And we interview them and ask them what they think about the future of work and what they think will matter. And there's some very interesting interviews in there. Now, to the point. I'd actually like to ask you guys a question. So with a show of hands, firstly, who here is currently in full-time employment? Most of you. And who here thought that they would be in the job they are in today 5 years ago? Like 2, 3, 4, 5, there's a few more. And who here knew that the job they're in existed 5 years ago? Yeah, just a few hands. So things are constantly changing. We don't know actually what jobs we're going to be at, even though everything we're taught up to in education tells us we should know. But we don't, because we never know if the job even exists. And usually it doesn't. So things are changing constantly, and they're changing faster than ever. That's why it's come into such sharp focus. But we used to think before, at least the media used to think, that the future of work looked like this. That it was all about putting a ping pong table in your office and being all like, ooh, we're so open space. We're so, oh my God, like, look at this guy's glasses, they're so cool. And then we also thought maybe standing desks were the solution. And if you couldn't afford one, you just put a hole in the ground. And then there's sort of a more modern media's favored view of the future of work, where robots and everything will take everything over and we're all going to be terminated. And then you have the conspiracy theorists' favorite version, which is we're all going to seep into permanent existence in virtual reality. Or, well, that's assuming that we're not already in it right now. Or the designer's beautiful view of everything being sleek and airy and elegant. And then this one, which is the assumption that we're all going to be turned into paper clips. Is anybody here familiar with this theory? Yeah, a couple of you in the back, yeah. So for those of you who haven't heard about the paperclip theory, it actually started as a thought experiment, not an actual theory, but a thought experiment by a man named Nick Bostrom back in 2003. And he wanted to put forth the potential dangers of getting AI wrong. So he said, if we don't tell AI the right things to consider as the right outcome, that something like this could happen where we create an AI that's geared towards making as many paper clips as efficiently as possible. And it keeps learning, keeps getting better at it, keeps getting more efficient at it. But we never thought about giving it a natural point to stop. When should it stop making paper clips? All it knows is that the ultimate, its sort of fitness function is making more paper clips. So it keeps making more and more and more, and it exhausts all the natural sources they would normally find, but it's learning. So in that time, it's become more intelligent about making paper clips, essentially, than a human being. So it keeps making more, and then it realizes, well, it knows that we have iron in our blood. And since there's no more metal left anywhere else, it starts harvesting us for paper clips. And in the end, the whole world's turned into lots of paper clips. But nevertheless, some people actually believe that might happen. I kid you not, I actually know people that do. And then I guess, to me, the most absurd potential scenario for the future of work is, and this is, I have met so many people that firmly believe this, is that actually this is all a fad. That this is, right now, the thing that we're kind of playing around with, but eventually everything is going to remain kind of the same. We're going to be able to go back. Probably the people that voted for Trump probably believe that as well. But that things aren't actually going to change. Well, they are. Now, one thing that we can go into the future quite confidently, because I'm not one of those people that's going to tell you, this will happen. This is going to happen. I don't know. I don't know what's actually going to happen. I'm just trying to make educated predictions. But what you can quite confidently believe is that anything that can be automated in the next few years will be. But people think that jobs will be automated. Automation isn't actually going like for human-defined jobs. It's going towards tasks. It's automating specific tasks. Every one of us has a job that has multiple tasks. Now, anything that is repetitive, anything that does not take a lot of brain power to do, but you have to do every day over and over and over again, that is primed to be automated. Things like teamwork, things like compassion, things like understanding, things like taking two completely opposing concepts and finding that they can be somehow linked in a new solution. That is not going to be automated anytime soon. Those are innately human abilities. And that is where actually the value of your job comes. Not a repetition, but in actual creative, innovative thinking. Now, one important thing that I want to stress throughout this talk is that AI will inherit our values. Things that we care about will very much program into it. But it'll also inherit our prejudices. Now, where this comes into play is that if you have AI being developed by a very specific group of people, Maybe it's a bunch of white guys, maybe it's a bunch of Asian guys, whatever it is. If it's a very specific demographic, they will actually program, not with any evil intent, program their unconscious bias into it, program their prejudices into it. So it's incredibly important that we actually take diversity in tech. And I know this has become kind of like a buzzword, but I cannot stress how important it is to consider diversity in tech, diversity of any kind, of thought, of age, of ethnicity, of religion, what background, whatever it is, so that you have diversity of thought, so you can approach a problem and account for many different opportunities, so people are not systematically left out in the future. Now, this creates a very interesting challenge, and instead of me trying to outline a big challenge for you, I actually do have Vint Cerf and his partner David Nordfors, who they founded I4J, Innovation for Jobs, with, to set out what sort of the future challenge will be.
New tech destroys old jobs and creates new ones. It is not 100% clear if the people whose jobs are destroyed are capable of doing the new ones. And therein lies the challenge. And that's retraining people to do new work.
And the challenge for all startup companies, investors, governments, and so on, is going to be to help the entrepreneurs, I don't know, quadruple world GDP by making all people serve each other better.
Oh my. So people got a little excited. No, so that was Vint Cerf and David Nordfors sort of outlining what's going to matter for the future. And side note, I love the fact that Vint kind of looks like the Source from The Matrix, but it's pretty cool. So on that note, I'd love to make 4 sort of statements for the future for the rest of this talk. That is, the first one, jobs will change, and they will keep changing. So we're not just reskilling and retraining ourselves for right now or for the next couple of years. We're learning how to do this on an ongoing basis. The second one is our definition of a good education will change. Third one, diversity in tech will be more important than ever. And finally, the future will be about empathy and something called a growth mindset. So keep these in mind, and let's have a little closer look at each one of these. So the first one, jobs will change and keep changing. Another guy that'd like to tell you a little bit about this, he's head of program management at Facebook, and he has something very interesting to say about his sort of job.
The jobs that exist inside Facebook today, most of those didn't exist, 3 years ago. You couldn't have gone to college for a job you wanted at Facebook, 4 years ago and gotten that job. That job changed. My first job at Facebook no longer exists. It's kind of been automated away. I'm asking my team, and they're even asking themselves, like, what can I do to get to no longer have to do the job I'm doing in another year or two? Like, how can I build a system or create something that makes it so that the job I'm doing right now doesn't have to be done by me anymore, which is good for them too, frankly. Like, you don't want to just keep doing the same job over and over forever. You want to be able to do something more challenging and something that's more interesting to you.
I think I very much agree with him as well. You don't want to be stuck doing the same thing for the rest of your life. I think pretty much everybody that comes to these conferences kind of has that opinion. But nevertheless, this continuous change means that technology will be demanding much stronger and more continuous connections between education and employment. Now, what that means is that we can no longer approach education or how we learn generally, not even like formally, but generally, we can no longer approach it in this sort of industrial way where by the time you leave university or high school, whatever, you are supposed to have learned everything you will ever really need in life to learn. That's just not the case. So we will have to create a system that allows you to keep educating yourself and keep reskilling yourself, and allows you to have that time to actually, change career paths or mold different ways for yourself. There's also the other thing that I find absolutely mind-blowing, and that is that children starting school today will likely live and work into the next century. Now, there is a statistic from the World Economic Forum that says 65% of kids starting school today will have jobs that don't exist yet, and that the education system will completely fail to prepare them for, barring any kind of drastic restructuring. And considering they're also going to work much longer and live much longer than us, it's pretty crazy because, I mean, right now, I guess 67 would be like an average age to retire, I guess. That's a number that I've been hearing a lot recently. And if your life expectancy is about 80, you know, that's another, 13 years that you got to hang out and then you're done. And then with all the advancements that we have with medicine and with sort of almost reversing aging sometimes, well, not reversing, but like significantly slowing it down, it wouldn't be unbelievable to think that our kids will live to be 120. They'll probably not retire at 67 because if they do, they'll have another 53 years to hang out. And those are 53 years that would be utterly wasted. So there's going to have to be some kind of change in this department. Which brings me to our second point. And this is, our definition of a good education will change. But we can't talk about education without actually seeing where it came from, where our current system came from.
Our education system is...
Oh, it's a little too fast. So yes, this guy that it's about to tell you everything, you might recognize him if you watch a lot of TED Talks. Sir Ken Robinson has something very powerful to say on where we came from and what we should do.
Our education system is predicated on the idea of academic ability. And there's a reason. The whole system was invented around the world. There were no public systems of education really before the 19th century. They all came into being to meet the needs of industrialism. So the hierarchy is rooted on two ideas. Number one, that the most useful subjects for work are at the top. So you were probably steered benignly away from things at school when you were a kid, things you liked, on the grounds you would never get a job doing that. Is that right? Don't do music, you're not going to be a musician. Don't do art, you won't be an artist. Benign advice, now profoundly mistaken. The whole world is engulfed in a revolution. And the second is academic ability, which has really come to dominate our view of intelligence because the universities designed the system in their image. If you think of it, the whole system of public education around the world is a protracted process of university entrance. And the consequence is that many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not, because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. And I think we can't afford to go on that way. In the next 30 years, according to UNESCO, more people worldwide will be graduating through education than since the beginning of history. More people. And it's the combination of all the things we've talked about, technology and its transformational effect on work, and demography and the huge explosion in population. Suddenly, degrees aren't worth anything. Isn't that true? When I was a student, if you had a degree, you had a job. If you didn't have a job, it's because you didn't want one. And I didn't want one, frankly, so... but now, kids with degrees are often heading home to carry on playing video games. Because you need an MA, where the previous job required a BA, and now you need a PhD for the other. It's a process of academic inflation, and it indicates the whole structure of education is shifting beneath our feet. We need to radically rethink our view of intelligence.
So he has a lot to say. I know he speaks very fast, but he basically says that our education system is no longer fit for purpose. It was made to fit a very different purpose. And the purpose that was made to fit is actually the industrial system. So the industrial sort of revolution and all that came with it. And that was a system based on brutal efficiency. Now, people weren't actually considered people anymore, unless they were managers, maybe. They were considered machines. They were supposed to maximize output for the minimum amount of resource put into them. And so an education system was made, which basically makes, an education system was made that basically mines people for certain desirable skills and completely disregards any other kind of contribution. One of the guys that, if anybody's interested in reading more on this, and anybody that went to business school will probably recognize, is this guy, Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was kind of the pioneer of that system of scientific management. And it was profoundly based on a certain dehumanization, which is ironic now that we're trying to find our humanity again in the face of technology getting that good. But nevertheless, it had a profound effect on us, and it started forcing people into a certain mold. It also did something that I think a lot of millennials today, to use the M word, suffer from, which is it gave us the idea that a mistake is the absolute worst thing you can do. Absolute worst. There's no such thing as a good mistake. You're a machine. You're not supposed to make mistakes, right? Never do that. Always try to have anxiety attacks over having one wrong answer at a test. How many people here know somebody who's had a complete panic attack over making a mistake on a written exam? And it also assumed that learning was finite. You would put some training into that person, then for the rest of your lives, you're supposed to be capable of doing what you need them to do. We'll skip over that. That was exactly what that guy said. And I think we need to shift, actually, to something that happened before the main part of the Industrial Revolution. That is something that Thomas Edison said. He said, I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. I think we need to start appreciating the human mistake again, because every mistake gives us an incredibly valuable data set. It tells us what not to do next time. It tells us possibly things that we didn't know before. You know, oftentimes these things are more valuable than getting it right in the first place. Now, what I believe we should do for the education of the future is we're going to rediscover the value in curiosity and creativity. I think that a lot of schools, especially the experimental ones in Finland, if you haven't read about them, are doing some very interesting things in that field. We'll be recognizing that learning is a lifelong process, and I think that universities in particular should capitalize on that opportunity instead of trying to aim for a very specific small demographic of people. And we're moving away from the world where hyper-specialization is seen as the key to a successful career. So we're constantly being asked, look, when we're 12, 14, 16, 18, you should pick the things to study that you will want to do for the rest of your life. I had no idea what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I'm doing something completely different than what I thought I would be doing. So there's a rising sort of group of people that's becoming incredibly successful, that's moving away from hyper-specialism. This is not to discredit specialism in itself. And they're called the expert generalists. So this is incredibly powerful for the entrepreneurs of this world, because this takes advantage of the way we can stream specific knowledge and specific statistics. We can just Google them. We don't have to remember them by heart. But what we do need to know is where to find them and what context to put them in. So one of the poster boys for expert generalists is actually Elon Musk. He was able to create $4 billion companies in completely different fields. What he did is he studied these fields very intensely for a certain period of time until he could break them down into their fundamental areas, until he understood them enough to see that there are crossover opportunities. And then he brought in other specialists who could help him build those ideas out. So it's a very interesting development in that respect. Now, I'm just going to rush through a little bit because I'm running a little bit behind. I could talk about this all day. The third point is the future will be about diversity, empathy, and a growth mindset. Now, the first thing I'd like to quickly say, I already mentioned diversity, but I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about why diversity is important. A lot of companies still see diversity as a CSR goal. It's like, it gives us a nice team picture. It makes us look good and nice in the newspapers, where that's not really the case. There's actually a business case for diversity. It's not just a thing to throw money at or do quotas for. If you have diversity of age, diversity of gender, diversity of socioeconomic background, of religion, of ethnicity, if you have people, who maybe have disabilities, they will be looking at the world in very different ways. And when they come together and share those perspectives, amazing things can happen. You will find more markets for your product. You will find more opportunities. And these are statistically proven things. I'm not just making this up as I go. You will have a greater understanding of where your business can grow, of what you can do, of how you can change the world. Because we ourselves as individuals don't know everything, obviously, but if we come together from different backgrounds, we can actually achieve a lot more. And of course, as I said, technology plus diversity can mean a better product market fit, in summary for that point. Also, empathy and social skills will be critical because the non-social part will be done by machines. But if we have empathy and we know how to truly work together, we'll be able to let the machines do the boring stuff and actually work together in a much more efficient way, understand a little bit more, maybe be a little bit less harshly competitive with each other and rather just work together for a greater good. And of course, finally, there's something called the growth mindset. I'm going to show you a final video explaining exactly what that is. This is actually Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. He's a big proponent of this. Now, the guy that's going to explain is Matt Lerner from PayPal and 500 Startups.
There's something called the growth mindset. So a scientist named Carol Dweck wrote a really good book and did a lot of research around this. In any given situation, you can believe that you succeed because of your ability, or you can believe that you succeed because you try hard. It's this sense that you really can cause things to happen in the world if you put your mind to it and go out and try hard and accept failure and learn from it and then keep going on it and trying harder. I think that's the most important thing.
So what the growth mindset is about is the fact that you have a sense of your own efficacy. It means that you're not doing something, that you're not limited to something, a certain preset of talents that you were born with. You can believe that that's how it is and that you're just not talented in something and therefore you shouldn't do it and you will never affect any kind of change in it. Or you can think, if I work really hard, if I work harder, I can actually affect the outcome of this to a varying extent. And if you believe that, you will try a lot more things. You will feel a lot more empowered to actually do something about it, and you will often exceed expectations. So having a growth mindset in a world that will constantly change and you don't know what your job will look like in 3 years is a very empowering thing, as opposed to thinking, oh, I'm only suitable for the previous system, therefore I might as well just pack it up and go home. So what do we need to do to sum it up? For the future of work, I believe we need to stop pretending that the way we did things in the past 100 years or so is the way that things have always been done. They haven't. We had a previous industrial revolution. People didn't know what was going to happen. People didn't know that factories were going to happen or anything like that. And therefore, you can't justify it that way here either. We need to treat learning and education as a lifelong necessity. We need to keep learning, never sit still. We need to be prepared to live and work a little bit more flexibly to account for that change. We need to use diversity of thought to make products and technology better. And finally, we need to hire and educate people for mindset, for the right mindset, for curiosity, and for real empathy with others. Now, oh, one more video. So now for the final message before I say goodbye, there's a little something that I'd like you to think about walking away from this session as you're going out there changing the world with your new ideas.
With all these powerful tools that we now are inventing and enabling people with, you can create a lot of value for that with others. But you could also use them for making other people's lives worse. So I think that if we want to have a working society in the future, we have to start thinking about helping each other more and trying to compete and destroy things a bit less.
So build new things, destroy things a bit less. So that was it. That was my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'll see you outside if you want to talk more.